WWE's backstage dramas are sometimes more interesting than what's happening on screen. When you put hundreds of professional athletes with big egos in one place, tempers can flare and fights can break out. In this video, we're looking at the 10 biggest backstage beefs in wrestling, starting with number 10, The Rock versus Shawn Michaels. The Rock and Shawn Michaels have never crossed paths in a WWE match. Not once, not ever. It was a generational dream feud right there for the taking, but real-life animosity put a stop to any potential programs between two of the most charismatic stars in wrestling history. When The Rock joined the WWE in 1996, Shawn Michaels politicked to keep him away from the main event picture because he was concerned The Rock would take his spot at the top. They were kept apart until 2000, when Michaels stiffed The Rock with a sweet chin music during a promo segment, which resulted in a legitimate fight backstage between the two. Even today, there are no reports that Rock and Michaels have ever reconciled their lifelong beef, and interestingly, in the NBC show Young Rock that chronicles The Rock's early years, it features a completely fictionalized character in the place of Michaels. Number 9, Matt Hardy versus Edge. Matt was involved in a real-life relationship with female wrestling legend Lita from 1999 until 2004, but Lita, someone who clearly had a thing for tag team wrestlers, began having an affair with Edge. Edge was married at the time too, and the whole situation exploded into a very public manner. Matt found out about Lita's cheating, then shared his heartbreak via the Hardy Boys website, and was soon fired by WWE for unprofessionalism. Fans turned on Edge and Lita when news of the affair reached the masses, so WWE leaned into the scandal and made Edge and Lita an on-screen heel team. Then, in July 2005, Matt Hardy made a shocking return to the WWE, attacking Edge and using his real name Adam in promos. Fans were unsure if it was real or scripted, but it did lead to a series of matches between Edge and Hardy that were very well received. Number 8, Chris Jericho versus Goldberg. Jericho and Goldberg didn't get along from day one. During their WCW days, the seeds were planted for a feud between the two, but Goldberg balked at the idea of working with Jericho because he didn't think fans would believe Jericho as a legitimate threat. Therefore, the potential program between the two was nixed. Goldberg's comments rubbed Jericho the wrong way, and a few years later, both men found themselves in the WWE. Within a week of Goldberg joining the company, their bad blood was quick to resurface when Jericho caught wind of Goldberg insulting his selling ability to people backstage. Jericho, not one to shy away from confrontation, questioned Bill before things got out of hand because he suspected that Goldberg would soon start throwing his weight around like he did in WCW. The two got into a legitimate fight backstage, which saw Jericho lock Goldberg in a shoot submission hold and take him down to the ground. Jericho himself later said that he was surprised that he managed to best Goldberg, and said that if he had died the next day, it would have been his greatest moment. But time has healed these wounds, and both men have reconciled in recent years, with Goldberg even appearing as a guest on Jericho's podcast. Number 7, Bret Hart versus Ric Flair. During their heyday, Bret criticized Flair's lack of variety and creativity in his matches, and lambasted the fact that Flair's signature chops violated a sacred rule of wrestling, to never legitimately hurt your opponent. Meanwhile, Flair called Bret's drawing power overrated, and over time their negative comments towards each other developed into real-life animosity. If not for the genuine beef, fans could have been treated to some incredible matches and storylines between the two, but Flair and Hart, despite both being in WWF and WCW together during the 90s, rarely interacted on screen. The two claim to have buried the hatchet in recent years. It's just a shame that it came 20 years too late. Of course, Flair dropping the title to Hart in the 90s definitely didn't help things either. Number 6, Vince McMahon versus the Ultimate Warrior. During the lawless days of the early WWF, the Ultimate Warrior was equally as over as the likes of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. Warrior's overblown and cartoonish style was ideal for the early 90s, but some major disputes with Vince McMahon prematurely ended Warrior's in-ring career. The Warrior had an ego as large as his physique, and in 1991, he threatened to no-show several events unless Vince increased his pay. McMahon didn't take kindly to being held ransom, so he fired Warrior in 1992 after Warrior made good on his promise of no-showing. What followed was lawsuits, countersuits, and even a DVD hit piece entitled The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior that painted Warrior as a toxic drama queen with an unchecked ego. For many years, it seemed that the Warrior would never be mentioned on WWE programming ever again. But Vince and Warrior eventually reconciled in 2014. The Warrior was finally inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and the following night on Raw, the Warrior came out and gave a heartfelt speech turned apology to the WWE fans. Number 5, Bret Hart versus Goldberg. Those in the internet wrestling community will be very familiar with this beef because Hitman's hatred of Goldberg has become something of a meme. Bret Hart can't go a single interview without talking about Goldberg's unprofessionalism, although with respect to the Hitman, we can understand why he might still detest Goldberg to this day, because Goldberg is the man credited with ending Bret Hart's career. In the main event of WCW Starrcade in December 1999, Bret Hart and Goldberg squared off in what was supposed to be a fantastic showcase between the two megastars. Despite Bret's legacy, he was yet to really do anything of note in WCW, so his bout with Goldberg was supposed to prove that Bret could hang with the guys outside of the WWF. But near the end of the match, Goldberg botched a mule kick and gave Bret a career-ending concussion. Bret continued on for a few more matches, not realizing just how severe his injury was. Shortly after, a doctor told Bret that he needed to stay away from the ring. And so in 2000, Bret Hart retired from professional wrestling. To this day, he has never let this one go. Number 4, JBL versus Joey Styles. JBL's hazing antics are widely documented, and during WWE's first tour of Iraq in 2008, former ECW commentator Joey Styles was on the unfortunate end of JBL's childish games. JBL used his size and status to his advantage and tended to only target those who were physically smaller than him. However, little did JBL know that Joey Styles was more than just a commentator and was actually a competent martial artist. Several days into the tour, Joey Styles reached his breaking point and clocked JBL with a firm right hand that laid him out and left him with a black eye. That night on Raw, JBL reportedly sat alone in his locker room for most of the night and was far from his usual self. The pain must have doubly stung for JBL since he was a vocal opponent of ECW and hardcore wrestling in general. Strangely enough, JBL's hazing abruptly stopped after that. Number 3, Chris Jericho versus Brock Lesnar. Chris Jericho is a man with a big heart but small brains, which is why he once thought it was a good idea to get into a physical fight with former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar. The altercation took place after SummerSlam 2016, the main event of which saw Brock Lesnar take on Randy Orton, a match that is famous in hindsight for having a very interesting finish. In order to establish Brock's dominance, the script called for Brock to elbow Orton in the head until it busted him open the hard way. Unfortunately, only Brock, Randy, and Vince McMahon knew of this intended finish, causing a lot of controversy backstage because certain people thought that Brock had gone into business for himself and legitimately hurt Orton. Jericho told one of the producers in the gorilla position that the finish was bullshit, but Jericho couldn't have had worse timing because he spoke the words just as Brock walked through the curtain. Jericho, to his credit, then got into Brock's face, to which Brock humored him by kissing him on the forehead and calling him a little bitch. The two then got into a scuffle which had to be broken up by Triple H and some of the producers, and the two legends never worked together again. We have to respect Jericho for standing up to the beast, but it definitely wasn't the smartest move. Number 2, CM Punk versus Colt Cabana. For almost 15 years, CM Punk and Colt Cabana were the closest allies. decades. They trained together, teamed together, and even had one of the hottest feuds in Ring of Honor history. But in 2014, Punk appeared on Cabana's podcast and made some comments that got him sued by the WWE. As the host, Cabana was sued too, and while the two former stars won the suit, it destroyed their relationship in the process. When the news of their crumbling friendship became public, fans sided with Cabana, something Punk took a disliking to. Punk then regularly took shots at Cabana, even as recently as 2022 at the now infamous AEW press conference. Cabana has reportedly tried to make amends with Punk over the years, but has been shot down every time, proving that even in his mid-40s, CM Punk never really left high school. Number 1, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Wind the clocks back to 1997 and you were either Team Bret or Team Shawn. Perhaps the most legendary beef in wrestling history, Bret and Shawn were two of the greatest in-ring talents of all time, polar opposites in terms of character, and both had egos bigger than the sun. During their early years, Bret and Shawn were reportedly friends, but when the Attitude Era rolled around, their relationship took a turn for the worse. Bret was unhappy with WWF's direction with edgier content, while Shawn was the poster boy for the vulgarity that was the Attitude Era. During a promo on Raw, their friendship exploded when Shawn referenced Bret's affair with Sunny, something the Hitman thought was over the line. Backstage brawls ensued, and around the same time, money issues persuaded Bret to sign with WCW over WWF, resulting in the now infamous Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series 1997. For 13 years, Bret held major grudges against everyone involved in the Screwjob, but in January 2010, Bret and Shawn reconciled on live TV, putting an end to their long, unnecessary rivalry that went beyond the scripted realms of pro wrestling. That concludes our list of the 10 biggest backstage beefs in wrestling. What other real-life rivalries did we miss? Let us know in the comments below.